is The Metro on WDET. I'm Tia Graham. And we just learned a lot from author and Detroit Free Press Red Wings reporter Helene St. James and revisited some highlights from the past 100 years. The Red Wings have a long history filled with trials and tribulations, a history that mirrors the city it calls home, gritty. Now, on display to celebrate and commiserate the last 100 years is a new exhibition at the Detroit Historical Museum. Detroit Red Wings at 100 will have a unique array of artifacts on display that capture the franchise from 1926 to today. The exhibition will be on display through 2026. Joining me now to talk a little bit more about Detroit Red Wings at 100 is Jeremy Dimmick, the lead curator at Detroit Historical Museum, and Marcel Parent, Director of Curation and Collections at Ilitch Holdings. Thank you both for joining me today.
Yeah, good morning.
Good morning.
Of course. So we're going to jump in because Troy Anderson is a lifelong Red Wings fan, and he's an NHL photographer for the Detroit Red Wings. He's been covering the team since 2017. But here's a clip of Troy talking about his favorite memories of the Red Wings.
Well, one of the honors of my career was being asked to contribute a handful of photos for the exhibit at the Detroit Historical Museum. And not only myself, but there are a lot of really great photographers that I work with whose work is being shown there as part of this exhibit.
And do you know which, of course, were you able to select which ones you sent over?
Yeah, I think we each selected 8 to 10 photos that will be featured. So I haven't seen it yet, but I'm really excited to see what ones are going to be on the wall.
So just listening to Troy, knowing that he's going to be featured within the exhibition, Jeremy, talk to us a little bit about how this came to be. How did you put together the exhibition celebrating 100 years of the Detroit Red Wings?
Yeah, so it's been an ongoing process, for a little while here. We knew the anniversary was coming up, of course. But yeah, started with working with the Red Wings, sourced artifacts from our own collection. The Red Wings, of course, brought their fantastic collection to the table. We even got some material out of the Hockey Hall of Fame from our partner organization over in Windsor. Yeah. So kind of bringing stuff from all over the place and putting together the exhibit. The photographer spotlight, we have a unique space at the museum where it's this area that connects to other areas that just kind of lends itself to photography. And so we thought, well, that's people's touch points a lot of times with the past seasons, and particularly the really early seasons. And had this idea to start working with contemporary Red Wings photographers to see, that kind of history in the making.
Which, this listening to Helene a little bit earlier as well, and she talked about that famous photo when Yzerman's holding up that, and he has no teeth,
right.
Or missing, at least he's missing. So he's just like, I look crazy. But it was an amazing moment, and we all know that picture. That picture when you see it. So I love that you brought that into the conversation as well. And, same thing, Marcel, just being in curation and seeing all of these artifacts and finally being able to put them on display in the city of Detroit in such a large way at the museum. And just talk about the work that you've done collecting and putting this all together.
Well, over the course of the years and the decades, there are many assets that come our way. And some of them are just dropped off, at our office. Others we ask about. And, we want to have memories of great moments. So you mentioned, that famous picture of Steve Yzerman holding the cup. It was the first Stanley Cup win in 42 years. And for Detroit, that was absolutely a moment that years later, where were you? Everybody remembers where they were when the Stanley Cup was won after 42 years. So that is, from a cultural and a community perspective, really, really important. So, whether it's the jersey he was wearing that night or, things for, Gordie Howe's, 600th goal or, other team milestones. It's our job to collect that, and also not just to collect it, but to preserve them. Because they don't last forever. Mm-hmm. They've got to be in the right place under the right conditions. And then when an anniversary like this comes up, we have to go through the brainstorming of what are the stories we want to tell?
Yeah.
What is going to be meaningful for the fans, for the players, for the team? And then the secondary question, which is really important, what do we have to help us tell that story? And we connected with, the Detroit Historical Society. Jeremy reached out, and it was like, what a great opportunity for collaboration. We knew from previous experiences that they had their own collection, they had a space, and we could go beyond even what we're doing at Little Caesars Arena. And it's been a challenging year because it's taken so much to put it together, but it's really been a labor of love, and we hope that, fans will, drop by and enjoy it and cherish moments that they've been part of, and learn about moments that, made the Red Wings one of the great, franchises in professional sports.
I mean, finding out that they're one of the original six, that was already something. Like, I had no idea how long the Red Wings had been a franchise. No idea. So that was something that instantly just made me go, oh my gosh, this is bigger than I thought it actually was. But hearing you talk about that, and hearing you talk about building out a larger exhibition or a larger showing that you all have at LCA, what goes into putting a collection out, especially at LCA, but what goes into putting a collection like this and moving it into the Detroit Historical Museum? I know it's going to be in a larger way than it has been. Other exhibits have been at Detroit Historical Museum. But I do want to start with you, Marcel, and just go into, if you can, choosing those artifacts and choosing how to tell those stories with the materials that you have.
Yeah. So great question. And it really starts with the stories. What are the stories you want to tell? The items are cool and everything, but they need context. They need to be meaningful. And there are a number of stories that we're telling at Little Caesars Arena that we felt, this is one of the highlights of 100 years. And both for the Red Wings and for hockey in general. I mean, there are some items that are on display at DHS that are about hockey, such as the ice resurfacer. The Zamboni wasn't always a thing. Zambonis came in, 40 years after the NHL, came on. And it's really fascinating to see the evolution of the equipment, of how we took care of the ice, the hockey sticks, the goalie helmets. So it really started on a list of top stories, and then as I mentioned a little earlier, then what do we have? Mm-hmm. It's nice to have an item to support the story, and among the items at LCA that fit those stories, we pulled them out. There's still a lot at LCA right now for the fans. We don't want the fans to think that they're going to go to LCA and all the cool historical stuff is out. Some of it is out because it was just so prominent, so important for storytelling. And then we had things in our collections that we haven't shown off at LCA. Like for any museum type organization, you can rarely show more than like 2 or 3% of everything you have. And I'm sure Jeremy can, confirm that. You've got this huge collection, and there's just so much he can, bring out, in the physical space. So this was a great opportunity to go through the collections and the different sites and what do we have in the mothballs that really deserve to be brought out here? And then we organized, shipping over to DHS for that, and had the team, put it together with Jeremy's team. And then the next stage is actually writing the content. As credit to Jeremy and his team, and the curators from on the Red Wings side who helped out, having an object, just stand there without a story that goes with it, it's just not the same. Yeah. So they did a great job with the interpretive panels and the timeline and, just creating that sense of magic for the fans and the players and whoever else is going to go, whether they're huge Red Wings fans or they're just getting into, learning about the history. Again, we want them to remember moments they were part of and learn about moments that came before them but made the Red Wings the extraordinary franchise that they are.
I mean, just listening to you now, and honestly, we have a Zamboni driver here, Alex McLennan, who does some of that stuff as well. And I'm thinking about him instantly, like if he was out there using some of the old tools, that would be something that he probably would not laugh about much. But Jeremy, bringing you into this conversation and just talking about Detroit Historical Museum's efforts in building out 3 galleries, is that something that's normally done?
No, not at all. And so it's kind of a Red Wings takeover at the museum right now, actually, which is great. And I think people are really going to get a kick out of it. The sports exhibits are a tricky thing because you want to walk that line between the people who are really passionate and can, quote kind of chapter and verse statistics and, that sort of thing, but then also, have something there for someone who just happens to be at the museum and they want to learn a little bit more about a certain subject matter. And I think this exhibit does that. It goes really deep in a couple places, but is also, kind of surface enough for a general audience. One of the neat things about the exhibit is it utilized a couple different spaces also that we don't typically utilize, like over our America's Motor City exhibit. It's about a 2-story exhibit where you can see, a car actually drop down onto a body. You see how car bodies were assembled. But there's a catwalk up above that space, and from one end of the catwalk to the other, we've actually displayed all 99 team photos over the team's history. So you can go through and look at every single year of the team. You can see the changes in uniform. You can see, of course, it goes from black and white to color. You can see the team expand and kind of the organization get bigger. And it's really, really neat because we wanted to have that connection with, every single year of the franchise's history. You never know, people coming through the museum, what year is going to be their favorite year, the team they really latched onto and the team that got them into hockey. And so we wanted to have something for every single person, So even if your favorite year was 1971, 72, you can go find that team and see everybody on the team. You can see, where they finished. You can see how they did. So it's, those highlighted stories, the Stanley Cup wins and the players who have had their numbers retired. We do kind of a deep dive on those, but then it's, you can kind of self-navigate through there too and find your point of access.
And I've been to Detroit Historical Museum multiple times. And for those who have never been or are unfamiliar with the layout or the setup or things inside of the museum itself, if you could just give people a little bit of a refresher about the museum.
Yeah, sure. So our organization, we tell Detroit stories and why they matter. So we're a museum focusing on the history of Detroit. And so you can go in and learn about everything from how, Detroit built cars to kind of how cars built Detroit. Our entire lower level is the streets of old Detroit. So it's Detroit in 3 different periods, in the 1840s, the 1870s, and then right on the eve of the automobile. So it's Detroit in these really critical time periods and these really transformational time periods for the city, and you can literally walk through history. It's a 3/4 size recreation of a streetscape in these 3 different periods. And then we do temporary exhibitions as well. We did, I think over the last calendar year, we've done about 30 temporary exhibitions. So if it's something where you were at the museum, 2 years ago or 2 weeks ago, if you come back, there's likely going to be something new. But it's all, like I mentioned before, it's all, kind of laser focused on the history of the city.
Yeah, and before we get out of here, because I know I could talk all day, we can keep going all day, but just bringing Marcel back into the conversation, what did you personally learn about the long history of the Red Wings and the importance that they hold in Detroit?
I think that some of the most important lessons from working with this history is that this is a team of hardworking players, very humble by nature. Even when they became stars, they were stars through their accomplishments. It wasn't a bragging thing. They've become one of the most successful franchises in professional sports. They have more Stanley Cups than any other American team. and they are just, these little jewels of history. I've been with them for 10 years now, and there isn't a week that goes by that, I don't learn something new about one of the players or the teammates. And Jerry mentioned the 99 photos.
Yeah.
Not 100 yet. If the 100th will come in May or June, whenever the season finishes. But looking over the players and the equipment, it's just an opportunity to time travel. And really there is always something you're learning. And in fact, just last week, it was interesting that we were thinking about the team captains. And what a great collection of individuals that have held the C for the Red Wings. And last week's discovery was that one of my favorite players, Dylan Larkin, has now been captain for 6 years now, which makes it as long as Nick Lidstrom and Henrik Zetterberg. And it's, he's moving into the top 5 now. Again, such a humble person, works so hard, quiet leadership. And it's just, just wonderful. And I lost track.
And that is what we have for our conversation today. I want to say thank you so much, Jeremy Dimick, the lead curator at Detroit Historical Museum, and Marcel Parent, director of curation and collections at Ilitch Holdings. And right now, Detroit Red Wings at 100 is on display at Detroit Historical Museum through 2026. I want to say thank you to Jeremy and Marcel for joining me on the Metro.
Yeah,
so welcome.
Coming up, what happens when AI starts to reproduce popular music from artists no longer alive? We'll learn more about the changing landscape of the music industry as AI enters the chat. Stay right there. We'll be right back. This is The Metro.